Look, I really do think I have the best job in the world. I think I am enormously privileged. And I feel it very strongly whenever I'm with my colleagues who are from Wellington and Auckland, who might be dealing with some really challenging things. We're very lucky to be here in Otatahi, where by any measure, our city is thriving. So look, I've only got about 20 minutes today. First of all, can I just say thank you to Liz Foxwell Canning for suggesting this. I'm looking forward to the chat. Hopefully it'll be interesting. Hopefully you'll learn a few things that you maybe don't know about Christchurch NZ or the city. What I thought I would do is I'm going to talk about three things. I'll just very briefly take you through who Christchurch NZ is. Many of you will know us, some of you may not. I suspect there are parts of our remit that will be a surprise to some of you and others that you'll know very well. And then I'm going to touch on two of our city strategies. We actually have three, but there are two that I'm going to talk about today. Our city brand, which hopefully will be useful to some of you, and most importantly for us, our Christchurch economic ambition, which I'm hoping some of you will be inspired about and want to come along on that journey with us. And then I'm going to just spend a little bit of time talking about some of the initiatives we have on at the moment at Christchurch NZ in terms of how we work with the tech ecosystem, particularly around what we call our sectors of strength or our growth sectors and our talent attraction play. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what I'm going to cover. So let's start with who we are, Christchurch NZ. We are the Sustainable Economic Development Agency for Otatahi. We're a council-owned organisation, and the barbecue pitch I always give when people say, well, what is Christchurch NZ? What do you do? I think we are largely an attraction agency. We are attracting things to Christchurch, whether it is investment, humans in the form of students or visitors or residents, businesses and jobs, events. We are attracting things to our city to make it a better place for our residents to live and to make it more productive. So essentially, that's how I would describe what we do. We do, of course, have a formal purpose and role, which is about building places or an economy where people and places thrive. But I think it's really just about those three things there at the bottom. And as I said, we're a council-controlled organisation. We've been around for about 7 years. We have an independent board, 6 directors on our board, including a couple of council directors. We have about 75 staff. And our work is driven by what the council want us to focus on. So we get an annual letter of expectation that we respond to formally through a statement of intent. And although we get some of our funding from central government and private sector, CCC is still our major shareholder with around $16 million of annual funding. And this shows you the kind of things that we deliver. And apologies, this is slightly out of date because we measure a lot of our KPIs at year end, and we're just about to obviously come to year end and see what they look like for this year. They will be better this year than they were last year. But this gives you an idea of some of the things we deliver. We're attracting, as I said, jobs are a really important part of what we do, and that has a big contribution to GDP. So for every dollar that council invests in us, we deliver around $5.50 in terms of GDP, directly attributed GDP return for the city. We obviously have a lot of economic insights. We host a lot of trade for mills to get people to understand what a great city we have, and we attract investment into the city. So this just gives you a rough idea of how we measure our return on investment for the council and ultimately for the Christchurch ratepayer. And this, I've just got 2 slides to show you, just because I wanted to give you a flavour of the broadness of the work that we do. So every quarter we do a presentation to council to tell them how we're tracking and some of the work that we've been doing. And this just gives you an overview of what happened in Q3. So that's January to March for us. This is in our innovation and business growth area, which a lot of you will know about. That's where Karen and Martin and the team sit. A lot of you will be working more closely with that group. And also urban development, something that people may know less about. We do quite a lot of work in urban development. We've been heavily involved in some of the work that's been going on out in New Brighton, also in Sydenham, and working with things like the street art community to make our city a fabulous place to be. And then this is on the other half of what we do, the destination and attraction and marketing side of things. And of course, we've got January to March is our biggest event time of year. So we had things like Electric Avenue this year. Now, we don't run Electric Avenue. Electric Avenue would happen without Christchurch NZ. Our role as an intervention agency is to see how we can maximise its return. So we invested in Electric Ave to do two things. One was to enable them to bring in a headline act, and one was to be able to get them to turn it to 2 days. And that has made it now the single biggest music festival in Australasia, which is remarkable for little old Christchurch, really. And we had about $10 million worth of visitor spend during Electric Ave this year. It will be bigger again next year. And I also just wanted to talk a little bit about the marketing and brand communications. You'll see there in the middle, our city brand. That's at the international airport's arrival, and that's what I want to talk about next. I want to kind of just dig into a little bit around our Christchurch city identity. So we have been asked by council to develop a suite of city strategies that will drive our work for many, many years to come. They are much bigger than what we can ever deliver. We're a small agency. We can't deliver these all on our own, but they really influence the work that they're doing. And as I said, the two I want to talk about specifically, not the destination management plan. I want to talk about the Christchurch city identity and the economic ambition. So let's start with the Christchurch city identity. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with the New Zealand Story programme. Hopefully you are. We are a small country, a long way from everyone else. And it's a well-known fact of marketing that in order to get more cut through and share of voice, you've got to be consistent in the messages that you use. So New Zealand, as a country, created New Zealand Story. It's a fantastic brand toolkit and messaging that is free to download for people if they're talking about New Zealand. This is the city version of that, is the easiest way to think about it. This is the Christchurch brand story. And it's very much around the fact that we as a city are a Goldilocks city. So we talk about being a city in balance. So you can have it all. We're big enough to be globally significant. We're small enough to know everybody. You really can ski in the morning and surf in the afternoon. You can have the great career and the great lifestyle. And that's never been more relevant than it currently is. So wellness, balance, having a balanced life in the chaos that the current world finds itself in is really important and really appealing to people. And we're seeing that in the numbers. You'll have seen maybe last week about the Great Southern Migration. We're really seeing people are responding to the fact that we have this incredible asset here, which enables you to have it all. And obviously that brand needs to come with a look and feel. This is the look and feel. Some people love it, some people hate it, like all marketing. It is subjective. What I can tell you is that it is founded very strongly on research. And so the more it is used, the better it will be for all of us. So it's fantastic to see that when you land at the International Arrivals Airport, like I showed you here, you can see that city brand woven through everything you see. The Crusaders, mainland football, all taking it on and making sure that this brand is used much more broadly than just by Christchurch NZ. It is a city brand, not a Christchurch NZ brand. And I should just give a shout out to our team because we've got a soft launch of our new website today. So if you get a chance to look at christchurchnz.com, you'll see the new Otatahi Christchurch branded website, which has got all this branding woven through it. Now, what does that mean for you? Look, we've got a free toolkit. We'd love you to use it. If you're talking about Christchurch, if you're attracting talent, if you're doing anything in this space, please head on to our toolkit. There are some really good resources there. They're all free. We want you to use them. The more that we can use the same language, then the more powerful our message will be. So that's the city brand. And I want to talk a little bit about our Christchurch economic ambition. And this is a new piece of work for us. So if I go back a couple of years ago, we were asked by the City Council to think about what the economic strategy would be for Christchurch moving forward. And there's been lots of attempts to do this in the past, and they've been lovely documents with lots of really great things in there, but they don't necessarily shift the dial. And so we said, well, we want to try a slightly different approach. We want to come up with a vision, multi-generational vision, that is, if you like, a North Star or a compass, a direction of travel. And then we want to bring as many organisations within our city on that journey with us. So they know better than we do about how to weave that vision into their own individual strategies. So how can we just make sure, like a braided river, all the different strands are connecting up, pointing in the same direction? And we used a beautiful tool called Te Kore Kore Ka, which is a lovely Māori tool making kit. And we came up with what I think really is it sounds very obvious when you come up with it, which is often the sign of a good idea, but an obvious vision, which is this idea of Porfenua, which is about moving towards a regenerative economy. Now, underneath that, regenerative is a very loaded word, particularly for Cantabrians. It's really important that those two words come together, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why. So I want to talk about what underpins that vision. So we have 4 goals or principles that help us identify what we mean by a regenerative economy. The first is this concept of pohāpai, or being unusually innovative. And the way I describe this is it's really the teal ideology. Christchurch is very well placed to be able to solve global problems. And we should unashamedly make money by doing so. So if you look at behavioural change, if you look at some of the global situation that we find ourselves in, most of the problems that we face as a world at the moment, behavioural change is not going to get us out of the mess that we find ourselves in. So everyone in New Zealand could cycle everywhere and move to plant-based food, and the climate challenges would still continue globally. So how can we, as a city, have maximum impact in terms of some of those global challenges and make money whilst doing so? And if you think about it, we're actually really well placed to do it. And in many ways, we almost have a responsibility to do it, because if you're in Gaza or Ukraine, or we can add new countries to that list almost daily, then you're not worrying about how to sequester carbon out of the atmosphere. So if we can come up with some of those solutions, and a lot of them will be tech-based, and we can make money whilst doing so, then we will have the biggest impact in solving the global problems that the current globe faces. So that's the first principle. The second principle is this idea of working alongside nature rather than against it. And it's not just about nature, it's about the fact that our Western global philosophy is that economic growth is infinite, but our resources are actually not. They're finite. Whether you're talking about social capital for cruise ships in Littleton, or whether you're talking about human capital or environmental capital, the resources are limited, but our economic model is about infinite growth. Now, those two things don't work. So how can we learn from Indigenous wisdom? How can we learn from natural systems that actually work within those constraints and work in a systemic way to make sure that we don't deplete those limited capitals or limited resources? So that's the second principle. First principle is it's a win-win. Let's make money out of solving global problems. The second principle is working with nature rather than against it. The third principle is around, I call this the don't look up principle. If any of you have seen that movie, Don't Look Up, it's a hideous movie. Watch it when you've got a very strong stomach. But there's a meteorite heading to Earth and we have plenty of time to blow it up, but we don't. Now, I think that that's such a good metaphor for where we are as a world, because I think humans are really good at solving simple problems. If you are choosing to make a cake, you follow a recipe, you make the cake and it turns out really well. Maybe next time you slightly alter it, but you will get a good result. We're good at solving complicated problems. We can put a man on the moon. That's complicated, but we can solve it. What we are notoriously useless at is solving complex problems. And complex problems involve ego and politics and money and power and agendas and all those things that human nature make it very hard to solve. Most of the problems we face in the world today are complex. So how can we solve complex problems? There are really 2 very simple principles that help you to do it. The first is that it has to be collaborative, which is why we've chosen to have a vision and bring people with us. The second is that it needs to be systemic. So you need both the legislation and the incentives, if you like, the carrots and the sticks, to help drive the change that you need. And you can have really great response to complex problems when there's a crisis. We came up with a vaccine for COVID very quickly when there was a crisis. But how do you do it when there isn't a burning platform that is not a crisis? So that's the third principle, is that most of the problems we face are complex and we need systemic change. And then the last one is essentially about being socially just or economically inclusive. It's about the fact that the rising tide has to float all boats. It's no good making money out of solving global problems if actually only a very small percentage of the population benefit from that. How can we make sure that everybody comes with us on this journey? So there are principles underneath the ambition. That's what we mean by our regenerative economy. And we have been spending the last 18 months working with a vast number of people across the sectors. That involves people that you would find that might be quite obvious, like aspiring materials, who are sequestering carbon out of the atmosphere, or leafed foods, who are looking at alternative proteins, and people who might be less obvious, like a Hamilton Jet or a Link Engine Management. But they're all moving towards this, and it's about direction of travel. We've got the council have endorsed it, and the council have included it in their letter of expectations for all their council-controlled organisations. So look, if you haven't signed up for this and you think it's something you want to know more about, and you're keen to be part of this journey, there is a lot going on in the background in terms of how we make this a reality. I can only touch on it very lightly today. Just reach out to us. We'd love to come and talk to you about it and see if there's a way that we can work together. I feel like I'm going very fast. Sorry, there's a lot to cover. So that's a really fast run through of who we are as Christchurch NZ and our two strategies that are most relevant to you today, the city brand and also the economic ambition. What I thought I might now do is just talk a little bit about what we are doing specifically in the tech space. I'm going to start a little bit with our sectors of growth, or growth sectors. You may have seen that in Seek today, there is a new ad. We're looking for a new head of growth sectors. So if this is something that you think is of interest to you, then again, we're currently recruiting in this space, which is exciting. We really work closely with businesses, either one-to-many through our growth sectors or one-to-one. We do things like the Regional Business Partners Programme that we do in conjunction with Business Canterbury, and that helps people develop their sustainability journey in this particular space. We also deliver decarbonisation and energy efficiency advice, and we partner with the Ministry of Awesome to support the startup ecosystem. So there's a little bit there. We obviously have a really strong relationship with Canterbury Tech, and we're a sponsoring partner for Tech Fest and the Tech Summit. And in recent years, we have promoted the city as a tech hub under the Innovate Utatahi banner, which you talked about really briefly earlier. That includes Tech Fest, but it also brings in the Smart Cities Innovation Expo and the Aerospace Summit during a week in September. So we're really trying to kind of generate momentum around Christchurch as a tech hub. But as I say, one of the main areas we work with the tech ecosystem is through these growth sectors. And these sectors are our scalable, high-value, high-wage industries of the future, where we can see Christchurch having a competitive advantage. If you go back 10 years, probably you wouldn't have said that Christchurch was going to be a hub for aerospace. And a lot of the work that we do behind the scenes has helped to catalyze some of that. I'm not in any way claiming that we deliver it. It's the brilliant companies that are here that do it, but we can help to facilitate and connect and remove barriers and make that all more seamless so that we can become really well known for that. Clean tech and particularly immunotherapy at the moment are two areas that are starting up and will become really interesting as we move forward. And one of the reasons some of these high growth future sectors are able to grow here is some of our underlying strengths. And the two big strengths that we have are our manufacturing strength and our tech strength. We have really strong tech and manufacturing infrastructure and brains here that enable these future industries to thrive. So that's one way that you might get involved as a tech company. Now, for our identified growth sectors, we support the ecosystems that surround them. And one of the ways we do that is we promote the city as a really great place to advance your career. And that talent attraction is really vital at times like during the COVID challenge, where it was very hard to find workers, but actually it's needed all the time. And a really good example of that would be the Christchurch Engine Centre. So we have been working with the Engine Centre. They're going to actually double their footprint here. It brings in another 200 jobs to the city, which is fantastic. Where do you find 200 highly skilled workers to be able to fill those jobs? So we're working really actively with the Engine Centre at the moment to either attract people in or to get people to switch career mid-career, or to activate some of our underutilised groups of people who are perhaps not currently in as much work as they might like to be. So we did a couple of years ago, we did a significant piece of work, and unsurprisingly, we found that women were the most underemployed sector in Christchurch, and particularly underrepresented in tech. And so we created the Power Up program. Many of you will know about this. Karen Hay, who's on the call, leads this for us. And initially that focused on attracting women into STEM careers. Now, we've been doing that campaign annually since 2021 now. And the focus and audience has changed depending on the different needs and market conditions at the time. And we've worked with Canterbury Tech on outreach and events around that. More broadly, we help you as businesses to attract talent by promoting the city as a great place to live and have a great career. That's actually our unique selling point. If you want people to come here, you've got to actually sell them the dream. The lifestyle here in Christchurch is, of course, unmatched. We know that. But there is this perception still that we don't have as many career opportunities. And it's a little bit true. It is a little bit true. We are a smaller population than the other main centres. But one of the good things that COVID did do was it actually started to really change working habits. And that ability to work remotely on a global scale is a massive competitive advantage for us as a city. So we just need to start telling people about the stories that we do. So in a few weeks, that toolkit that I talked about earlier, that brand toolkit, we're going to load some more talent case studies on there. They'll feature engineering, software, and game development talent talking about their career and lifestyle. Hopefully, that will be useful for you as you start to look to recruit people. You'll be able to use those case studies to tempt people into our glorious lifestyle. But we've also been working with Canterbury Tech to enhance and promote the ecosystem map that you can see on the slide here. It's a really brilliant tool. It's been developed locally by the fantastic Altviz, and it shows the depth and breadth of tech businesses here. It's going to be a really powerful tool to attract talent, we think. If you're not already registered on it, then we'll likely be in touch in the coming months to make sure we've got your details right so that we can use the tool to its full potential to attract talent and investment to the city. And then finally, because I want to leave as much time as possible for questions, because I'm sure you've all got different things that you want to ask. Another focus in our talent attraction work is inspiring the next generation. So look, connecting and inspiring young people into career paths which fuel your industry can really benefit not just your business, but actually the whole region, the whole city. So we want to build a pipeline of smart, innovative and inspired talent together with you. So we've got several options for employers with ways to inspire young people about your industry. It can be just a couple of hours or as much as you want to give by getting them involved. So look, there's lots of things that we're doing to try and attract talent, whether it's through the female side of things with Power Up, more broadly attracting people to the city, our work in growth sectors, or working with youth. As I said to you, our website is new this week, so please head on over there and have a look. There's a lot more information on there around the city brand and the economic ambition. And I'm going to stop talking now because I feel like it's just a lot from me of information, and I really want to hear from you as to what would be most useful with your time.
Awesome. It can feel a bit sort of ongoing, can't it? Awesome. Thank you so much for all of that, Ellie. Yeah, we've got a few questions here in the chat that we'll get to, and if anyone's got any more, please feel free to chuck them all in there. I guess the first one's that so David has asked a couple of questions around the brand.
Yep.
A bit of a double banger, so I'll sort of ask both and let you sort of come back to them a wee bit. He's asked, why does the brand not reflect the many cultures that have made significant economic contributions to Christchurch? And did you consider and understand the historical brand equity of the previous branding in moving? So I guess just can you run us through a bit of the decision-making process around the brand and how that got there?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it is in many ways, the no-win brief, the city brand, because there are very diverse views about what it should, it shouldn't be. And one of the things I've discovered in my life, I'm a singer. And when you sing in a band, I absolutely guarantee you that at some point the bass player or the drummer will come up and say, why don't I sing this song? Now, no one goes up to the bass player or the drummer and suggests they drum or play the bass, but everyone thinks they can sing. And in many ways, everyone thinks they can do marketing because a lot of it is just common sense. And so when you do a marketing thing that is always going to have a subjective element towards it, you are always going to have people that aren't happy with what you've come up with. What we did was we did two things. So we used absolutely a very, very broad research base to make sure that we got this right. We talked to around 13,000 people to get this. It was really difficult to do it. It's extremely difficult to get something that everyone's going to love. We got lots of, oh, it looks like the Stuff logo on its side. It looks like this. It looks like this. You're always going to get that, right? So we made sure that it was based on very strong research. The second thing we did, to your point, David, is absolutely looked at what had gone before. So the Garden City is a really interesting thing, right? Some people love the Garden City. Some people hate the Garden City. You have got this massive divide, but it's there, whether you like it or not. Christchurch has an association with being the Garden City. Now, I would argue very strongly that we are not a Garden City. If you've been to Singapore, that's a Garden City, but nevertheless, we have that historical thing and we can't ignore it. So what we did is we said, well, what does a garden city really mean? And when you started to dig under the surface, it was about balance. It was about this connection of city and nature, of having the best of both worlds. It wasn't necessarily about curated botanical gardens, although they're a beautiful and fantastic asset to the city. It was about that connection with nature. So we felt that the balance work was actually a progression and evolution of that garden city concept. So we were acknowledging our past without connecting ourselves to it. So the short answer is absolutely. We looked at research. We absolutely looked at history. Is it something everyone will love? No. Do we know that it will work if everyone uses it? Absolutely.
Cool. Very comprehensive answer. Thank you. Another question, so from Bern was, are there emerging efforts to make it easier for immigrants with a tech and innovation background to gain New Zealand residency? Obviously, especially Christchurch, given that's what we're talking about. But is that something that ChristchurchNZ sort of plays around in or has any impact on?
Yes and no. So Business Canterbury do a lot of this through their advocacy work. We have really strong relationships with central government on both sides of the house. It's really important that we maintain those really strong bilateral relationships. And we are represented on a group called the Small Business Advisory Group. We work with Minister Penk, where we can go and we can talk about the things that are getting in the way of businesses being able to recruit. That's the kind of thing that we feed up through that advocacy channel. So the short answer again is yes, but we are more powerful when we are part of a united New Zealand voice. So the other route that we tend to have quite a lot of advocacy work is through our involvement in our peak body, which is Economic Development New Zealand, and we work together as economic development agencies across the city to identify what barriers are getting in the way and what would be helpful. And we quite often get exposure and two-way conversations with ministers around that where we can raise those issues. The best thing you can do is let me and or Leanne Watson know what's getting in the way so that we can see what the common themes are and then push them up the pipe.
Oh, awesome. That's fantastic advice. Certainly that'll be a good one for obviously anybody in the chat who's having those. Please, we'll make sure we email out ways to get in touch with Ellie around those sorts of things. So really good to know. I had a question around the engine centre. That's quite exciting news. I mean, I feel like anytime anyone's going to double a footprint or grow by that amount is quite extraordinary. What's the time frame on that? Because obviously, as you say, bringing in people or mid-career transition, it doesn't always happen overnight. So what's
I think Karen Hayes on this call, and she will probably know more about what the time frame is in terms of when they're going to be looking at recruiting. They're absolutely currently in the process of building that second big shed as the test cell. But Karen, do you know when they're actually going to start recruiting? Because I'm not close enough to that to know.
Just to put you on the spot, Karen, whether you want to jump on or
let's hope she's
text.
not having a cup of tea somewhere. She might be. Sorry, Karen, she'll be scrabbling for the mute. Look, I don't know. So let me get back to you on it. What I do, look, that's a brilliant example of the city putting its best foot forward. And I talked earlier about collaboration and the importance of working together. It was a really great collaboration between the airport, the council, and ourselves to make sure that we put Christchurch's case as well as we could to the American owners of the engine centre, because they were essentially consolidating the number of bases that do this work. And there were other cities that were throwing lots of money at it, which we can never do. So this is where our benefits working together and also being able to, oh, there you go. Caroline says ready Q4. There you go. Thank you, Caroline. But working together to make sure that we emphasize our non-financial incentives is really important.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much, Carolyn. Ready Q4 2026 has just been put into there. Fantastic. Thank you, Jane. I was about to just ask for any other questions if we had any. So Jane's asked, how are you engaging our rangatahi and secondary school students in the pathways to working in local Christchurch tech sector and other leading employment opportunities? I know you, the Inspire Next Generation program. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So again, Karen works really closely with our education sector, both at a secondary level, but also through to tertiary. And we have, of course, also here, as part of our Christchurch NZ remit, we have Christchurch Educated and Steffi, who's working at bringing in international students. So look, we're always engaging. It's a challenge with $16 million and a remit that we've got. There is always going to be more opportunity than there is resource. So we have to try and work out where we can best have an impact. I often talk about us being an intervention agency. We should only be getting involved when the private sector or other agencies can't, and there is an opportunity or a market failure that needs addressing. And I think we should always get involved in a time-bound way. So we go in with a view to coming back out so that we don't get stretched thin by just doing more and more over time. I think the work that we do with secondary schools is much more limited than the work, for example, that we do at a tertiary level. So we are working much more with UC to make sure that their graduate programs are aligned with our industries of the future, whether it's aerospace or immunotherapy. I don't know if any of you know much about what's happening with BioAura and CAR T therapy. That's a really exciting thing that we've been working on bringing to the city, which can make Christchurch an immunotherapy hub for the Southern Hemisphere. That's going to need 5-star nurses. It's going to need great immunotherapists. How do we work with our tertiary sector, AURA, UC, Lincoln, to make sure that we've got those skills there? At a secondary level, there is a lot more activity going on, so our intervention is less valuable.
Fantastic. Well, that leads really nicely into the next question from Mary of wanting to hear more about health tech. Where is that information and who are the startups? Which, I mean, there's so much that does go on, and that's something we find as Canterbury Tech, is being able to have all that information and make it accessible for people looking for it. So in terms of health tech, would you be able to point anyone in that direction and tell us some more?
So let me tell you a little bit about what's going on, and then hopefully our new website will be a lot easier to navigate. As I said, we've been formed for 7 years, and the old website, I think you could tell, was formed as a kind of an amalgamation of 3 different agencies coming together. The new website is driven much more by the experience, whether you're here to invest or visit or whatever it is you're coming to do. It's much easier to navigate. So you should easily be able to find about what's happening in the health tech space on our website. We're also trialing a new tool called Data Scouts, which and we're trialing it in the health tech space, which is about mapping the health tech ecosystem. If you want to know more about Data Scouts, again, reach out to us. Sean Melly is the head of our health tech cluster. So he is leading a lot of work in that space. He can make sure that you're connected into that trial, because we're trying to see whether or not that digital infrastructure adds real value to our growth sectors. And we think from early stages that the health tech work is really good. And we're linking up with Te Papahaura on that as well. That's one particular way you can find out. I do want to talk a little bit more about the CAR T therapy, though, because for those of you who don't know, truly, I think if you ask me the single thing that I've done in my career that I am most proud of, it would be this. So if any of you know David Downs, he was he's the CEO of New Zealand Story. He got diagnosed with B-cell lymphoma about 9 years ago, and it got pretty ugly. He wrote a lovely article in the Herald called A Mild Touch of the Cancer, but his cancer turned out not to be that mild. And as he got further and further down the track, it became pretty apparent that actually this was not a good prognosis. And just about as he'd been given his life insurance payout, he got a reach out from a guy in Boston saying, look, I've read your column and I think you'd be a good candidate for this CAR T therapy. And it was a pretty new therapy at the time. And he went over to Boston and had this therapy and was completely cured. Now, it has a 60 or 70% success rate, depending on the different type of CAR T. So thank you, Carolyn, again. You've put some great links in there. What they essentially do is if you've got certain types of blood or bone cancers, they take out your T cells. And I don't know if any of you are kind of scientists, but they add, it's called a chimeric antigen receptor onto the T cell, and then they put it back into your body, and your body, in David's words, becomes its own biological weapon. Now, we have attracted a company called BioAura. They're funded by Bridge West out of US to set up their manufacturing hub and ultimately their entire enterprise here in Christchurch. They weren't even thinking of Christchurch. They were thinking of Wellington, and we were not even on their radar. But again, the great tech scene, the health precinct, the proximity of the airport, the great tertiary sectors, all those brilliant things have enabled them to come here and see that we're the best option. It conservatively will bring $250 million in GDP once it's all up and running. And not only that, there will be a spin-off effect, which is that New Zealanders' lives will be saved. So pretty exciting stuff. Go and have a Google. I honestly think that what that will drive is you'll get great talent coming here because we will become an immunotherapy hub in the same way that we've become an aerospace hub. So health tech is a super exciting space.
Fantastic. I think then that leads perfectly nicely, I think, into James's question about are there enough opportunities to support up-and-coming tech talent and retaining it? So, often there's more that need for intermediate and senior experience roles. So how are we bridging that gap of making sure that we're working with tertiary providers to ensure that, the opportunities they offer can align with what's going on here, but how are we making sure that we're sort of set up that next level? Is there anything that ChristchurchNZ does for that graduate and again early practitioners that we're realizing that we need to focus on as well? Does ChristchurchNZ have anything in the realms of that?
Look, it's a really interesting question. I think when I first came to this role, the focus of ChristchurchNZ at that time was very much on the startup ecosystem, and that's great. It was really important. I think our startup ecosystem is in reasonable shape at the moment. So, and maybe that means that we need to shift our focus a bit more to that scale up space so that you've got those entry level graduate jobs that enable people to make their career here. We're no doubt, we are attracting graduates here. We know the University of Canterbury is thriving. We know that 43% of people that came down from Auckland since the last census are in the 18 to 24 bracket. We're getting young people. Retaining them here and keeping that talent here depends on there being great jobs. And that is an enormous focus of what we do. How we do that and making sure we've got the right jobs is really challenging. And it can only be done in partnership with people like the university, like Aura, like the schools, and like the startup ecosystem so that we can work out where the gaps are. For example, it's really interesting. I know this is not tech related, but if you talk to businesses, a lot of businesses will say they're really struggling to get engineering talent. And yet, if you talk to the University of Canterbury, most of their engineering graduates are having to leave Christchurch because they can't get jobs here. Now, what's going on there? Is there a disconnect between what we're defining engineering as? So getting under the hood of some of that is really helpful to just understand exactly where those gaps are and what we can do as an intervention to make sure that we're helping businesses to fill them.
Fantastic. Cool. This is the opportunity if anyone has any other immediate questions for Ali while we've got her here in the hot seat. Otherwise, when we email out, I'll conglomerate all of this information and links and send it all out as well for everybody. You're welcome to then also reply to that with any questions and we can have a back and forth. We'll make sure that we introduce you to anybody that needs it. Mary's asked if there's an opportunity to mentor newbies. That's probably one I can address in our email that goes out, Mary. So I'll throw out some opportunities for that as well. Cool. There you go. Thank you from Katrina. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ellie, for spending the time with us today and to everyone who's attended. It's fantastic to hear about it. I must admit, all these sorts of things, as Mary says, are very inspiring. I always go away feeling quite jazzed up about our local tech sector and innovation and all that jazz. So thank you very much again, Ellie. Any final words?
Oh, look, I just want to say, look, we are your resource. You pay for us, and we want to deliver the best value for money that we possibly can. So we are really open to feedback. We're really open to ideas and opportunities. And the more you engage with us, the more that you'll be able to get from some of our resources. So go in, have a play around on our new website. Let us know if there are any bugs in there. I'm sure there will be, hence its soft launch. But a huge shout out to Plato and Datacom, who have helped us with all of that as well. So it's looking pretty good. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Rightio. We'll leave it there. Hope everyone has a good rest of the day, has a fantastic Matariki weekend, and hopefully we'll see you at our next in real life event. Otherwise,
thank you all. Bye.
Bye.